Welcome to our second day of our SunoikisisDC, the Classicist 2016 planning seminar. We have David Bola from the University of Classicist in London.
Thank you, Monica.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to try to talk for just a few minutes. I think it's 10 o'clock from here, so someone will have to flag when we get.
How many minutes do we want to talk?
How they can we I think.
I'll try to round up by half past our original timetable. So, helps that I don't have a lot to talk about yet in terms of digital classics training and teaching in London, because London has had somebody dedicated to teaching digital classics for a whole 2.5 months now. So we're just getting started. So I'm going to talk a little bit about training in digital classics, which I differentiate from teaching. About communicating digital classics primarily through seminars, but which I also relate to teaching and to pedagogical use of digital classics, and then talk about teaching digital classics, which when I talk about teaching, it will very quickly become clear that all I'm really talking about is SunoikisisDC, because that's the only plans we have right now. And then I'll end with a little bit of spam just to take advantage of the fact that I'm standing at the front of the room and control over the projector. So to start with training, we have a few things related to training in digital classics going on. We have for many years now been running Epidoc summer schools, not always in the summer, but we still call them summer schools. And more recently we've started running staff training events and incorporating cross-graphical and linked data methods into the Epidoc training workshops. The second thing that I identify as training is that I have recently, especially but for several years, been invited to come and give a digital class in a regular classics module. So not teaching digital a digital classics module, but the module on epigraphy. They say, oh, let's get someone to come and talk about digital epigraphy for 1 hour in this 20-hour module. And so they invite me to come in, and I call that training, not teaching, because I don't get to set them an essay question. We don't get to assess them on what they do expect. The lecturers who invite me in to speak don't expect me to deliver any intellectual content of classics value to the students, but to give them something that might be useful to them as tools, as methods. So it's training rather than teaching in the traditional sense. The way I say that's what I want to change by setting up actual teaching in digital classics. And the third thing that we do by way of training, which is something that I've started doing in the last few months, which I want to talk about a tiny little bit more, is these one-day digital classics training workshops, which we have been funded by the London Arts and Humanities Partnership, which is a partnership of the 3 of the main universities in central London to fund PhD students using Arts and Humanities Research Council funding, and also to fund various activities to support the London PhD community in Arts and Humanities generally. And we've got a small amount of funding for them to run digital training for classics students in particular. We're also collaborating with the Institute for Historical Research, because a lot of the methods, the digital methods in particular, that are of interest to classicists will be equally of interest to historians, and that's probably true among many humanities disciplines, but classics and history I think are especially close in this regard. And we've specifically designed these to be not only introducing digital humanities methods to classics students, but also introducing digital humanities students to ancient applications of the sorts of methods they've been studying as well. So the classes tend to be mixed. That's something I was inspired by Monica's classes here, really, where she mixes the two, and I think that's a really, really good model, not least because of the conversations that you then get between the students and potential collaborations that get set up there. And so just to say a little bit more about these one-day workshops, we currently are running 4 such workshops that we have designed, and the first of which is the one that I basically teach. It's the sort of thing I've been teaching forever, which is digital approaches to ancient text. So we talk a bit about Epidoc, we talk a bit about text markup, named entity recognition, and then what you do with digital text. The second of which, I've got a student who's involved in social network analysis to help me teach, and we talk about structured data and visualization of data. So we get students basically to take not very structured data, like a table out of a Microsoft Word document, and try and turn it into something that is genuinely structured, that has a relational model to it. And then we show them how to visualize this using some free and common tools. The third one we've been doing is 3-dimensional approaches to cultural heritage and landscape. This is the one that's been massively oversubscribed every single time we run it. The first 2 we've run once each so far, and we didn't quite fill the room of 14 students, which was fine. But the 3D one, the first time we ran it was so oversubscribed, we ran an overflow class almost immediately. The overflow class was massively oversubscribed, so we're running a further overflow class. We're going to have to figure out a way to monetize this, because there's just so much. No, I don't mean to make profit, but to get it self-funding, because we can't keep running this on LAHP money that will run out. And there's so many more people who are interested in this than simply classic students. I mean, everyone wants to come to this. We've got museum professionals coming, school teachers coming. Everyone wants to come to that particular workshop. So that's a really exciting one. And I'll just talk a little bit more about that in just a second. The fourth one is one that we haven't run yet. I'm currently designing it and figuring out who's going to co-teach this one. Is on reception of antiquity in digital culture. These are both the area of classics that I had forgotten about when I was trying to divide everything up into 3 neat workshops, and the area of digital humanities that I'd forgotten about when I was trying to divide things up into 3 neat workshops. So looking at the way, not only in computer games and in CGI in movies, but also reception in things like the digital displays in museums, in the sorts of 3D displays that tourism sites use, and this sort of thing. So reception in the broad sense, not only in the popular culture sense. So just very quickly to show the sorts of things we do in these workshops, we try to give, it's a 1-day workshop, so we can't possibly teach everything, so we give an overview of the sorts of methods that they might come across if they wanted to study this particular topic, and the digital approaches to this topic in more detail. We talk, broadly speaking, we talk about digitization, so the capture of data into digital form. We talk about enhancement, so then what digital form data we can create using our own judgment on top of that digitized data, and then how we exploit the digital data, both the captured and created digital data in various ways. We give them then a menu of the possible approaches and tools that they might come across, and we show them, of this menu, here are the tiny, tiny fraction of them that we're actually going to do, but those that we do, we give them hands-on experience on, so they actually try out something. And what we try to do is we try to give them, over the course of the day, a sort of progression where they can use the same materials throughout a model and see something that they've created at the beginning of the day turn into something quite interesting towards the end of the day. And just to show how that works, we try to do something similar in all of them, but to show how that works, I'll use the 3D workshop as an example. So the 3D workshop, which is designed by Valeria Vitale, who's a PhD student in classics and digital humanities in London, not by me, I shouldn't take any credit for this whatsoever. We start by doing an exercise in photogrammetry. We first explain to them the many different kind of ways that they might create a 3D scan of an ancient object. And then we say, for demonstration purposes, we're going to show the one that you can do very, very cheaply and very, very easily using your cell phone as a camera and using a free online app to upload your photographs to and get back a 3D model. We then use another free tool, Mesh Mixer, to edit that model and clean up any excess things that were left on there, to add any bits that were missed from the photogrammetry. We then move to another tool. We use Google SketchUp to build so not from scanning now, but from purely from building a mock-up of an ancient building using the dimensions that we have from the archaeological remains, and then using our judgments to figure out what the dimensions of the rest of the building would be like and what the design would look like. And we ask them to incorporate their scanned object from the photogrammetry exercise into that model somewhere. So they start to get a progression in there. And then for the fourth exercise, we extract a bit of 3D landscape from Pompeii, and we put that building, which is the ecclesiasterion of the Temple of Isis, into its actual location in the landscape above Pompeii, and enable them to then see what it looked like in the landscape. It's a 3D landscape. How much of the fact that it's right up behind the theatre, so one of the highest points in the city, what does that do for what you can see from it, from where you can see it from, that sort of thing. And so we give them, what's the kind of progression they've linked together things they've done in all four exercises there. And it's a tiny fraction of the kind of things that they might do. And in each case, we say, here's what you can do with the free tools that everyone can access and work on both Mac and PC in this classroom in one day. Here's what you might do if you actually had some funding and you could use a tool that worked really well and that was better than the free tools you have. So that's the state of the art for training at the moment in digital classics that we do in London. Under communicating digital classics, I just want to talk a little bit about the Digital Classicist seminar that we've been running in London every summer since 2006. The aim of this seminar is specifically to fill a gap in the annual seminar program. There's lots and lots of seminars run at the Institute for Classical Studies. I think 6 or 7 seminars that run every week throughout all 3 terms. But at the end of May, everything ends and doesn't start again until the beginning of October. So it's quiet over the summer. PhD students are still around, almost certainly. Research staff are still around. Let's try and do something fun to at least have something to do during that time. So we run these seminars. There have been, I don't want to say imitators, but we've inspired and got involved with several other workshops of a similar kind, most of them in Germany, most of them run by someone in this room, or someone who has been in this room in the last couple of years. So it's a model that people are familiar with. And the thing I wanted to mention is that next year I'm trying to, for the summer 2016, I'm trying to change the slant of the London Digital Classicist seminar slightly from being primarily a venue for research delivery, where some people come, they deliver papers to impress their colleagues and put on their CVs and whatever else, and then there's discussion afterwards where other serious academics try to attend the threads, into something that's a slightly more frankly student-targeted environment, where the focus of the papers is on pedagogy, it's on delivering training on a particular topic to the audience, who may or may not be students, but I think that in the digital realm, we're all training ourselves and each other anyway. Where we can talk about research experience, we can talk about the needs of this sort of research methods and so forth, and people who are running projects are likely to have for the future, but retaining obviously its research focus and value. These are still academic seminars. It's not, we're not turning it into a classroom instead. But I want to make it slightly more student-friendly in that sense, with a view to, in the longer term, encouraging, not only encouraging, but in some sense giving students active incentive, if not credit, for attending these sorts of seminars. So that's an experiment I want to do next year. Berlin have been doing something a little bit like this in the last year or two, so I want to see what we can do with that. And finally, just to talk a little bit about teaching in digital classics, the Institute for Classical Studies, where I work, it's really a coordinating institution. It provides research resources for classics, not only in London, but across the UK, and in theory worldwide. And so we don't have an undergraduate intake or a master's student intake. We can supervise PhD students, but we have started teaching MA modules in the intercollegiate degree, which is shared with UCL, KCL, and Royal Holloway. So we do have a little bit of teaching. There's currently only 2 modules on offer, one taught by the director, Greg Wolf, and one taught by myself, which is called Digital Classics. And it has the subtitle Linking Written and Material Culture, which is primarily there because I was told that students don't like methods modules. Every MA course has one of the compulsory modules is sources and methods or something similar. And students always hate that module because they've come here to learn about classics. They haven't come here to learn things that they kind of think they should be able to figure out anyway. They haven't come here to learn how to write an essay or how to search the web or how to read an inscription or how to, they want to study, Greek drama or Roman history or whatever it is they've come to study. So telling them this is digital classics, no one will sign up, I was told. So give it a title that makes it clear that this is a classics module. So linking written and material culture, I think that's more or less what you do when you study digitally. You don't only study a particular kind of material, and so I'm being explicit about that. We're talking about applications of methods and technologies in a research context. We'll be explicitly studying classics, not just studying digital humanities methods. Because we started this, we only advertised this module in the last few weeks, and students make all of their course choices now before they enroll in September. So I was told that the chance of any student actually signing up for this module was somewhere marginally below 0. And so I said, fine. Last year we tried to, we offered all the students in classics in London, all the students in digital humanities, the opportunity to sign up for SunoikisisDC, and one student in digital humanities took us up on that. So I figured if we just say to them, you can just come along to this module and, just for fun, no one will. If we say, this module is offered full credit, and it's a serious module, and here's the assessment criteria, and here's how it works, maybe some will come along just for fun, even if no one takes it for credit that year. So that was the plan, and we'll see how that works. I've had 2 students email me so far saying they're interested in taking it for credit, so we'll see whether they actually do. That'll depend a little bit on what hour we choose to run it in, where we talk about that this afternoon. And as should be clear, whether I've been explicit about this, this module is just the first 10 weeks of SunoikisisDC. And not just, and obviously we have to assess it and all the rest of it in London, but it's basically the module description here, which is not there, it's a few seconds behind, which is obviously too small to read. There's a first paragraph here saying how digital classics is important, and a second paragraph here saying, and thanks to this international collaboration, you can take this module with Hangouts, etc. So it's entirely the SunoikisisDC module, really. So that's as far as I'll go in terms of talking about digital classics teaching and training in London. I'll end with, so I'm not really spam, it's an invitation really. But something that you may have come across, again the slide's a few seconds behind, this is a call for papers for an issue of the Bulletin of the Institute of Classical Studies journal on digital approaches and the ancient world. And because that's too small on that slide, I'll put the text up slightly larger of the call. We want to define, so this issue will be edited by 3 people with very different backgrounds in digital classics. So myself, a papyrologist with expertise in social network analysis, Jana Brooks from Leuven, and a mathematician with expertise in medical imaging, who's worked on many classics projects involving digital imaging, Segel and Taut from Oxford. And we're interested in seeing research papers, the kind of papers that a classics journal would accept anyway, because they're classics papers, but with some kind of explicit digital approach embedded in the methodology explicitly and described in the methodology of this paper. And the other thing that's worth noting that I think is potentially of interest to people here is that we specifically said approaches to the ancient world, not approaches to Greece and Rome. We're talking about the ancient world as widely as you could possibly understand ancient and world. So we will talk about sub-Saharan Africa. We will look at papers about pre-Columbian America, about anywhere from East or South Asia, etc. In the pre-modern period. So that was my spam, as it were. Thank you for your time. I hope.
So, Gabby, thank you very much. And I think that we are going to present SunoikisisDC in April in Edinburgh at the, I can't remember, the Association of Classical
Association.
Yes, Classical Association. So, Gabby, Valeria Vitale, and myself will be the presents on different classes, what we are doing. So it's an opportunity for disseminating our opinion. So thank you, Gabby. So it's Gabby was with us last year for the first planning seminar, but now I'm happy that you can join the program with the classes. Questions or comments?
I like the phrase, students don't like methods and modules. Also because when you don't have the H in a program, these kind of modules can be a sort of Trojan horse in many cases. Right. And you're, well, so much ahead of many institutions that you're past that stage. I mean, that's not your problem at all. So you can just say, this is not methods because we know how to do that and we are actually doing stuff that will be of interest to you.
In theory, yes, the classicists don't necessarily see it that way. I mean, even some of the most enlightened classicists in London who have collaborated many times with people in digital humanities, and they know that they write in funding bits, digital humanities are not our technical assistants, they are completely equal partners in the research agenda of this project. They then come around and say, I can't get my computer print. Can you fix it? And say, well, I'm a content assistant. Yes, you are. So it's still that struggle to find. Hope that was listening.
Okay, so thank you. We have the afternoon for discussing many other things and the syllabus. Okay, now we have Eleni Lucia from the University of Florida. Eleni was with us last year for the first planning seminar. Then she couldn't join us for the semester due to the academic calendar, because in Florida we start in January and then we end in April when we started. So that's the reason. But this year, fortunately, we have a long semester. So, yes, exactly. So welcome, Eleni. Yes, please. Thank you again.
Hi, I'm Eleni Bossi and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Florida. And the reason I'm bringing this up first is because my appointment for the first time is a joint appointment, which is a big success for the area. I have a partial appointment with the Department of Classics and 25% with the Digital Works Institute. I first got involved with the digital humanities area in 2007 when we started developing the digital epigraphy and archaeology project, which is entirely different from what I'm still doing that, but it's entirely different from what I'm going to talk about today. And then a few years later, when I wanted to start using more computational quantification techniques for personal philological research, and examinatic oratory, I contacted Greg and Monica and the team in Leipzig, and they have helped me a lot since. So as time passed, I got more and more involved with the area. When the position opened at the University of Florida and I was shortlisted and I interviewed, they wanted someone with the classics expertise that I had, but they also wanted someone who does interdisciplinary work. They didn't particularly have in mind digital humanities per se, but when I presented my work, they thought that it seemed interesting. However, when they wrote my contract, at least the first one that I did not sign, they didn't want to include digital humanities in the contract per se, which meant that I could do my interdisciplinary work, but the entire tenure would be in classics, which still is. The problem is, however, that, first of all, it may sound selfish, but I wanted to be a little more protected. And my second thought was that if we start something now with my position, if we establish a joint appointment, then maybe when I leave, for one reason or the other, that this position will remain and it will be a joint appointment. So I insisted that there should be something written, otherwise I couldn't sign. We were very close. It was a week before the absolutely final deadline, so we were all under pressure. I was playing it cool. I was that cool. But eventually, they decided to give me a 75% appointment in classics, 25 at the Digital Worlds Institute. My tenure is in classics, but it specifically states in the contract that I can pursue digital humanities work, and all the publications and grant writing and everything will count towards tenure, which was a big success. So now I'm in the traditional department of classics and the Digital Worlds Institute, and so that you can have an idea. They have computer scientists, they have digital artists. In other words, they take theory and they turn it into practice. I have been collaborating with them even before the appointment, so that's how I was able to communicate with them. And they design different projects varying from physical therapy over with 3D technology to reviving ancient Egypt, to all sorts of different things. So taking computational theory and computer science theory and turning it into practice. So it made sense. It made sense to collaborate with them. So now, after I studied, the issue was what sort of courses I was going to teach. One of the courses every semester, one of the courses is in classics. The other is at the Digital Worlds Institute. For the classics, first of all, it takes really a long time to introduce a new course, for one thing. So there was no way that I could start something immediately in August. The other problem was that what code they would set for the course. The usual Greek and Latin would be GRK, LNW, GRW, but if I introduced a DIG, which would be a digital course, I didn't know what. First of all, it wouldn't be in the classics department. And then they would have problems because they wouldn't get money from the people who would sign up for the DIG course. They would all go to the Digital Worlds Institute. So you see how I got mixed into other sorts of administration and politics. So what I decided to do to start teaching it in the classics department, where even though people are very amenable, but nobody else does anything in this area, I decided to keep a traditional course, a Greek novel I was teaching in the fall, but introduce digital classics, digital elements. The course was an advanced reading course. I decided to read Longus's Daphnis and Chloe. The type of the course, the typical session would be they would have to prepare the translation as usual at home, and we would go through it and translate and discuss other social, literary, political issues. You know, a typical reading course. Then I started thinking after the first couple of weeks, and when I got to know the students, what I can do to introduce, I am more involved with tree banking and analyzing syntactical phenomena. So how can I introduce tree banking in the course? My students, for the most part, more than like 3/4 of the students are very advanced indeed, not only by name. So when I try to approach it from the sense, okay, what if we analyze the sentence, it will be easier for us to translate. They didn't really go for it because they were able to just go through the text and translate. So that approach didn't work. So the next thing that I thought is, why don't I teach it the same way that I do my own research? I didn't start doing tree banking to help me translate. I wanted to do it for further research. So I decided to set particular issues, questions regarding the novel, for example, who the readership is, We have strong female characters, and the language is simple. So does that mean that it was meant for women or for the less educated? We have Odysseus, but also usage of Koine Greek. So how do we approach all these issues? Of course, there was secondary bibliography accompanying the discussions in the course. But then I told them, so how about if we use tree banking to analyze different parts either of the same text? For example, if you take Longus, you can start with a prologue, you can do tree banking then on a dialogue or another different narratological piece. Or if we take, what if we take all the prologues from all the 5 surviving novels? We talked a lot about the fragmentary novels that were relatively recently, I mean, for classics, it's recently published. So if we tree bank these, maybe we can find, visually at least, some connections. And these they went for. They actually loved it. This is how I got them into tree banking. I have some sentences here. There are mistakes, and if you notice, I didn't push them, at least on the first round, to tag them. They were not open to the idea, so I thought instead of just pushing on them and having them think, okay, she told us she's grading, so I have to do it, I wanted them to see why it's important. And actually, a few of them, after the second half of the semester, when they started using it on their own accord and for their own personal interest, some of them got into tagging as well. And then I gave them a bibliography and we started talking about linguistics. Some of the students, as I said, decided to do different sentences from different parts of Daphnis and Chloe, which was a text that we were reading. Others decided to find similar parts, either the prologue or the abduction of the young lady from all the other different novels. So they found the pattern that they followed. And then we brought those sentences in class, and we were discussing what we could see visually. So is there perceptible difference or similarity between the structure of the sentence in the same author, in different authors? What can we see? And also what we noticed is that it was easier for them to pay attention to the words, because you know, you come across words like blepo, which is not something that you would find in classical Greek, so we approach more the Koine Greek. But even though they were able to, of course, they translated in class, but when they just had blepeing hit them right in the face, just one word popping there, it was easier for them to process and think, okay, that's not something that you usually see. Especially when we put the sentences one next to the other, and we had Horan in the other author, which made the difference really obvious. I don't know why for some of the students what tablets they were using, but if you notice, the previous sentences were not color-coded. So I don't know if that was a problem with the... Then we talked a lot about the chronology, and that's why we got into the Ephesian tale. But as you can see, even from that little sample, the students really got involved in tree banking, and they actually read a lot, and we discussed a lot about linguistics. So we started doing that really seriously. Now, the other thing that I usually like to do, but I haven't been able to do so far, so that I won't exclude students, is I would like to do, and I was talking with Kenny yesterday about that, a comparative course. There are so many literary genres that if you examine them both in Greek and Latin, epic history novel, you will get a lot more out of it. But the problem is the pragmatics of the course. You would exclude students who don't know one of the two languages. So what I usually do is I teach one course in the fall and the complementary course in the spring. So now in the spring, I'm going to teach a Roman novel. And the interesting thing is that the students who took me for Greek novel, they have already, in addition to the other students, they have already signed up for a Roman novel. What I'm going to do with them is we're going to read selections from the Satyricon and the Metamorphoses, but not random selections. We are going to do, for example, we are going to do Kena Trimalchionis. So if you actually see tree band it will be more possible, I think, for the students to process all the linguistic parameters that we see in that text, which are, I know you cannot tackle this, you would need an entire year, but you see where I'm going with the whole idea. Also, I intend to select passages, for example, from the Metamorphoses, that are equivalent, like a Cupid and Psyche passage, that are equivalent to some of the more narratological parts of Greek novels. And then, hopefully, perform a comparative analysis between the structural construction of Greek novel and Roman novel. It will be interesting and different, considering that, like I said, I already have students who worked a little bit with me on tree banking in the fall. So they will be the ones that I think that I'm going to make them explain to the others. They will be more open to the idea of co-teaching rather than me standing and explaining. And then the others who will, I think, be more open to the idea, since they will be a little jealous of everybody being, or of half of the class being able to do that, and of them not knowing what they are doing. So that's that is what I have done. I have been doing in the classics department. Something else that sprang up is you can do that on a more personalized individual basis on independent studies. We have, and I have links, I don't know if the PowerPoints are going to be online, we have a University Scholars Program. It's a research possibility for undergraduates. It's very competitive for you to get in, you have to apply. And one of my students applied with me as a mentor. And he wants, Greg, you are going to like that, he wants to work on Greek and Hebrew. Initially, he didn't know, we applied for that early last year, and he started this year. Initially, he didn't think about tree banking. But when he's dealing with translations of the New Testament and the usages of particular phrases that we find in the Septuagint and New Testament, and how all these were affected by the Hebrew tradition. And then he also wants to examine particular, let's say, more well-known translations to prove that they haven't really been relying on the text. So when he was in my Greek novel class, so when we started tree banking, he said, you know what, I'm going to do that, and I think it's really going to help me. Something's going to come out of it for my other project. And this is one of the sentences, but he wants to tree bank sentences in Hebrew. He has been taking Hebrew as well, to be able to read it from the original. But having in mind the planning session, I asked him 3 questions. So why did he select, because he started with one passage. He has been doing more since then, but why did he start with that? And as you see, he said, I wanted to look at one particular translation, the New World, that I suspected was taking undue liberties in its rendering of the passage. So you can use tree banking, even if you are advanced, and he's really advanced. He can literally converse in Greek and Latin orally. He's a really advanced student. So he still felt that he would showcase his argument better by using tree banking, rather than describing it merely with words, as he says. What did I hope to see? He used it more as a visual aid, so I could more easily explain the translational issue, especially to those who are not so proficient in ancient Greek, because we are talking about a very diverse audience. And he said that he wanted to combine traditional research and enhance it in a way. The tree bank not only connects the words, it also color codes. Additionally, it assists in the parsing of the grammar of the words. And he concludes by saying, I'm confident that the tree bank will assist me greatly in communicating my argument. So it just, what I got out of it is you just need to show them what they can do, and after that, leave them to decide on their own how they're going to use it. Now, that was the 50% of my teaching. The other 50%, the 1 course, 1 spring, 1 fall, is for the Digital Worlds Institute. So they didn't, I didn't set the parameters, the pragmatics for the course. They told me that I need to design, and I would allow feedback and comments and anything. This is the first time that this is going to be taught in the spring. They wanted me to design a course for humanists, maybe with a little more particular focus in classics, but not necessarily, but since I am in the classics department. But for computer scientists and digital artists that are at the Digital Worlds Institute, which will have two sections, a graduate and an undergraduate. So they want a course for everybody. I started thinking about it just to cope, that it's going to be really exciting, and it can be, but it can be a huge success, or. So what I have designed a tentative schedule. I know that I have access to the registrar's office, so I can see who has signed up so far, but we have add and drop week, so I don't know what kind of people I'm going to have, and in what percentages, how many are going to be humanists, with no digital humanities background, how many computer scientists I really have to walk into class January 5th and see how it goes. The tentative schedule, the idea that I have is to have them communicate and see each one the other's work and be able to talk about it in an educated way, and you will see what I mean by that. The first couple of weeks, I think I'm going to talk to them about digital humanities. First of all, definitions, the history of the humanities. It doesn't mean that humanities students are aware of the history of the humanities, not digital humanities, let alone computer scientists and more science students. And then history of digital humanities, and then talk about the relations between humanities and sciences. For example, they all want to examine human life. They are all interested in improving everyday life one way or another. Humanities people are able to communicate arguments, to find them in political campaigns. So it's not only academic and in the class. And for every topic that we will be discussing, they will have a project, an issue that will be more open to them to decide how to relate to it, because I want them to bring things from their background. I don't want to tell the computer science students, okay, here is an Erasmus translation, tell me what you're going to get out of it. I want them to bring, each one, for example, for the first week, to bring a project, a book, an image, something that is humanities to them, whatever that could be. Then for the second part, I want the humanities students to be able to see the other side. Or you can see vice versa, I guess. So what is computer science, but also what is humanities computing? What do we mean, and how does human-centric computing is actually involved in our lives, which will be beneficial for the humanities students for obvious reasons, and for computer scientists who have been involved in more theoretical problems and have not really applied their knowledge on the humanities issues. How when you develop, for example, a game for physical therapy for kids to walk, it's not only academics, it's not only research, it's something that applies to the human life. So the same thing, human-centered computing, humanities and computing and the humanities, and essentially pose them with the question, the issue, the discussion that computing helps us fulfill the basic mandate of human science, to ask better questions. And isn't that essentially what we are all doing? So in a way, confront one student with the other's reality and make them find a way to communicate it. I'll tell you in SunoikisisDC 2017 how it worked. Then for more, once we get out of the theoretical part, the elements of digital humanities, what do people mainly think? We are talking about, first of all, text and document. So how do we make selections, for example, when we digitize? That will be a question both for the humanists and for the computer scientists. Does that mean that we validate text when we choose to digitize one and we leave the other? Do we create a fake reality? So questions that can apply and can be discussed by both sides, scientists, let's say, and humanists, from different perspectives. But ultimately, the result of the discussion will be a digital humanities discussion. How do you make decisions about a program, about a tool, about a game? Continuing with the elements, we are going to talk about object, artifact, image, sound, space, and again, as you can see, it can be applied. You can see it from both perspectives: humanities and computer science. Then, after we have discussed again the theoretical background, we can get into tools that have been designed, and sign up into them, use them, examine the editorial decisions they were made, and I have some sample list. I think I'm going to group them as text-based tools, image-based tools, archaeology, classical geography, epigraphy, and then when they have seen and played with what is out there and have discussed and thought about why they decided to go for those projects, how they dealt with them, how they collaborated, work a little bit hands-on with XML, tree-bank annotation, text alignment. In the digital epigraphy project we just uploaded a few months ago, the entire SG style from Monumentum and Kiranum, which means that we have Greek and Latin, so it will be a very good hands-on experience for them to try and align these. Text visualizations, and I'm going to let them use them on their own ideas. For example, for someone it could be Sallust and Cicero and Lysian and Lucian. For others, the text visualization could be on Facebook. If you upload someone's likes, I don't have a Facebook account, so when you upload something they have written, how does Facebook know who your friends are? How do the most important words pop up? So I'm going to show them tools and then let them decide how they're going to use them from their own perspective. And then recently, University of Florida and the libraries have acquired 3D technology, digitization, depth cameras, 3D scanners. So I think I'm going to take them around campus and work with actual 3D constructions that they can digitize, and then 3D print them and think about how you can use them either in your research or teaching. What can each one of us, what you can get out of it. The last thing that will be concurrently, of course, with all this, it will be a main project, but it has to be a collaborative project. A humanities student and a programmer or a digital artist, where the humanities student will provide the humanities details. For example, design me a game, a screenshot, a day in Pompeii. So the humanities student will give the information and the programmer will design that. I have two sample, I don't know if we have time, I have two sample projects. They haven't come out of class because, as I said, I just started teaching this in January, but I have been collaborating with programmers for personal research. So we have the Magic Mirror Theater. I gave them specifications and we created an exact replica of the Theater of Epidaurus. Using Kinect, the gaming engine, when the student stands in front of Kinect, they can see themselves in the theater. And then I had the students who designed this come to my Greek drama class and reenact something with the students. They actually did Classicist, which was quite fun. And the other one, Ancient Egypt, even though it was not my area of specialization, but they designed a game. And there is, as you can see, there are 3 Kinects here in front of the students. Every Kinect can capture up to 2, and they can see themselves as Egyptian figures. On the screen. They actually invited, we got permission and they invited 5th graders from a local school to come and play and see how they reacted, how they liked it, if they felt more comfortable. So this is the, again, it was not the outcome of a class, but it was a collaboration between me, a humanist, and programmers, and something came out of it. And then last but not least, we are going to talk about issues practical that we have to deal with: publication, open access, tenure and promotion, and employment opportunities. But for the employment opportunities, we do push them to see how they can work in the libraries and other digitization projects, not just academia. A very exciting news: we just established for the first time a digital humanities certificate. you have to take 3 courses from different departments, 2 courses basically, and one we call a capstone course where you do a project, which can be just an enhancement of your humanities project. If you are a historian, you may decide to create a map. It doesn't have to be a whole new project. And then it will appear on your graduate transcripts that you actually do have a digital humanities certificate, which I think counts a lot, especially if you open the SCS placement service announcement. They have increasingly been asking for digital humanities. So this actually brought us a lot of students. We have the University of Florida digital collections, and I don't want to take any more time, 3 minutes. Okay. So we have the libraries are heavily involved with digitization projects, and we have digital services as well. So for faculty who does want to pursue something, a project, but they don't know how, so there is the infrastructure, and we do have a digital humanities working group as well. And actually, it was the digital humanities working group, some of us that got together, and we pushed through graduate school and the university the digital humanities certificate. Giving it a more structured form actually has brought us more students. And even though it's the first time that it's being taught, I think so far we had a little over 10 students signed up for the capstone, the main course. So this is this is what we have been doing at the University of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have so many things. Questions? We have 2 minutes. Yeah. Okay.
The student who's working on Hebrew tree banks and that kind of thing. What's their big impediment to moving forward right now? Someone help is sort of where we're getting at.
I don't think he has an impediment.
Okay,
It was just the scholars program runs through the entire year.
Yeah.
So he first needed to start with, what is the project, what his issue is, how he's going to approach it, but he's moving steadily into it. I don't think he hasn't mentioned anything.
All right, well.
And what heavy text has he chosen to tree bank?
He has, so far he has been doing, he wanted to see how it works, so he has been dealing with parts of the text that haven't been translated properly. He hasn't shown me the full project draft yet, but he wants to see, if you want to see if something works or not, you want something that's really obvious. So first he's dealing with not necessarily that relate to his issue, but with passages that have been, he thinks, mistranslated.
I would like very much to keep track of his work because I'm doing something similar, although completely lacking the digital part.
Let's go.
It's probably because I don't do tree banking yet, but I was surprised to see that you were studying novels through tree banking and not trying to think of ways of having that narratological features analyzed or I mean, just the relationships between sentences that go beyond the sentence.
Narratological, of course, we have that component of the class, but just part of the class. We do the traditional theoretical secondary bibliography, narratological analysis, but then how do you get to think about other things that you wouldn't have thought about, very eloquently said? And it seemed to me that structurally, if you want to examine, for example, the prologues, even though novels are pretty straightforwardly written, the prologues tend to be long. And they have their own identity. For example, you have Cariton starting pretty much like Thucydides. And then you have others that start like a modern fairy tale. There was once a very wealthy man and they have a beautiful daughter. So how do you, it's very easy to get sidetracked through the narratological. We examine that, but then when you get down to it, are the sentences long? Do they resemble the structure of a traditional, let's say, anti-classical structure? In Achilles Theseus, for example, we have very short sentences, which is something that you don't really think because you translate comfortably. until you break it down and you see that, okay, in the previous one, I couldn't even fit the sentence on the screen. This one is very short, and it seems like it's a visualization, but when you come to think of it, it's actually the way that the author was writing. So different, let's say, narratological issues through debunking.
I just know that it's being tackled by software like CatMap, and people are trying to develop things. So I don't know if it could be matched, used, or compared in some way during the course. That's a lot of work, but
I think that we probably convey a false impression that morphosyntactic annotation is the only kind of annotation, because it's what we start with, and I think pretty foundational. Somebody in one of the workshops was talking about, for example, annotations of information status. And so there are, which is another way of getting at how sentences relate to each other. But the corpus linguists have many, many different categories and dimensions of annotation. And so things like discourse structure lend themselves well to that. So there's no reason, but we should probably at least, I should make sure that we allude to the fact that the other things exist, even if we pragmatically focus on this first kind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So Maria Guerros, the pronunciation is correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay, perfect.
You were with us last year for the planning seminar, but you couldn't join us for the semester due to the academic calendar. But this year you will be able to teach a common session and maybe to have students. So
Yeah.
okay, so welcome.
So thank you. Yeah, so far 2 students have said that they could be interested.
It's good.
Yes.
We're happy. We're happy.
It's 2 more than we expected. Okay. Thanks for inviting me here. Digital Classics in Finland is a title I could also have added a question mark behind. But, well, we have something. I can start with, well, first of all, that view is Helsinki, and you're all welcome to come and visit. And where the yellow bubble is, that's around where the university is. Oh, it's not showing really clearly this. So the highlights in digital classics in Finland are 2 doctoral students, Timo Korkeakangas, who was here yesterday. So he is defending his PhD very soon, January 15th. And he has a large tree bank of Latin, late Latin, and so his main subject was studying the case system of how the Latin case evolved into what it is now in the Romance languages. So that'll be interesting. I haven't read the book yet, so I'm waiting eagerly. But now Timo is actually moving to Oslo, so he has just signed a contract to go to Oslo. Treat him well, don't spoil him there. And then now we have a new PhD student doing really digital classics dissertation, language and metrics of Greek poetry. So Erik has a large collection of late poetry, and we will not know yet what he will make out of it, but he has already built some tools to analyze metrics and so on. So that'll be in future. So we have some projects. My earlier project could be called Digital Classics project. I was trying to figure out a way to linguistically annotate Greek documentary papyri, so that starting from scratch, and I will, since what digital classics in Finland is not such a big topic, I will talk about that later, at the later part of the paper. Now we had a new project started September, Act of the Scribe, transmitting linguistic knowledge and scribal practices. And so I will be able to continue this linguistic annotation system of papyri in that project, and we will be focusing on scribal features, how their scribes influenced the language, how much we can actually detect who was writing, who was the author, and all sorts of things that you can read more about in the web page. So, and a few words about classics in Finnish universities in general. We don't have that much personal that is steady personal. For professorships, there's only 1.5 professors in Greek and 1.5 in Latin. So the total professorship is for both languages, but the person who is there is actually more a Latinist. In Jyväskylä and Tampere, there are professors in Romance languages and in Tampere in history who both are basically classics in training, but now their positions are so they influence there nonetheless. Then some university lecturers, which equals maybe the associate professors in the US system. So one for Greek in Helsinki, more for Latin, and one joint Greek and Latin, joint lectures in Greek and Latin in Helsinki, Turku, and Oulu. So in many universities in Finland, you can do your master's in classics, but it depends on the university if you can do more Greek or not so much Greek, so on. Then, of course, there is staff that is not so permanent, hourly paid teachers and academic researchers like me. We have small percentage of our work time should be dedicated to teaching, 5%, in fact. So this Sunoikis is perfect for this, for example, and then some adjunct professors, but that always depends on the money situation, how much these can be employed. But let me say that in Finnish high schools, there are very few high schools that offer Latin, and none offer Greek. So basically all students start from zero when they come to university, and there are not many teaching positions in high schools. So we are not such a big traditional career opportunity in Finland. For digital humanities is now getting a foot in sort of in Helsinki as well. There's now developed a teaching module which began this fall. There are some PhD students taking for digital humanities, which Erik was one of them. There is a professor for digital humanities, Timo Honkala, and so that is gaining more ground. But for digital classics, only thing has been this course that me and Timo held in the fall of 2014. Nobody asked us to give such a course. We just decided that we wanted to give that. And there were quite many students in the beginning. This is our syllabus. You can practice your Finnish again with this. But well, you see some familiar words. You can see that it is divided roughly into two sections. So in the beginning, we were presenting different digital tools, and the students had assignments that they would familiarize with some digital projects and write some assignments based on those. we were teaching them to use some of the tools and discussed their usefulness and their agendas. Then we discussed tree banks and dependency grammar. And so the latter half of the course was dedicated to tree banking, because that was, for me and Timo both, sort of the thing that we were interested in. So this last part of with the cadet näppiksellä thing means hands on the keyboard. So that was hands-on working on the annotation in the classroom, and they did also do this at home, but in the classroom we could, as teachers, support them all the time. And it was a good thing that there was two of us. Timo could deal with the Latin students and I could deal with the Greek students, so they were both. And it was quite hectic sometimes. It wasn't so easy to start for them, because it was a whole new concept of thinking about the language. But in the end, I think it paid off. The students got to choose their own text, which they wanted to annotate. So, for example, one student wanted to annotate Varro because he was I want to get down to the question, is it really such a complicated text or not? And well, then they all presented their research on, they annotated some of them more, but at least we said you should annotate 1,000 words. And then they did queries, and they then presented their sort of research report at the end. So there were two students that only took the first part for credit, and 6 students who did the whole thing for credit. And then there were more students attending in the beginning, but they were just listening and auditing. But the feedback was very positive, and it said things like it's good that we have something different sometimes in our department, and the tree banking was something that they felt it would be really useful to sometimes have also in the normal text in reading classes, because it really helped them to understand the grammar better. So much for digital classics in Finland in general. I will now present a little bit about my project on annotating the papyri. The documentary papyri have certain distinct features which created problems when trying to make a linguistically annotated database. So we have the original text that was written in antiquity, and it has been published and edited and standardized. Well, both sort of things are present in the editions, but well, I will come back to this. But the question is, which one should we, which features should we be analyzing in tree banking? And the papyri are often very fragmentary, so we don't always have whole words. We have uncertain letters, there are abbreviations, there are gaps where the editor has supplied some text, and so on. And the papyrological corpus is digital and in Epidoc XML, but Epidoc XML is not understood by the annotation frameworks like Arathusa. Oh, I should have said also when I was talking about the course that we did use Arathusa and Perseids, and they were both working very well for that. So I hope all of you know the papyri.info interface where the documentary papyri are housed, and they are also searchable there. And the metadata there is also searchable, so it's a very good tool for papyrologists, but for linguistic searches, it's not convenient. You can't really search linguistic structures or anything else linguistically interesting. This is one example of a short text there. You can see there is what has actually been written on the papyrus is presented in the upper part, and then what we have as apparatus as the editorial corrections and reading suggestions appearing there below the text. But in the epidoc XML, which is behind this, which is there on the right, the markup has these several options side by side with their tags, like reg, and orange, and the expanded abbreviations are there so that the tags come in between the words. Also, the uncertain letters, the tags are breaking up the words, so it's impossible to bring this kind of text to linguistic annotation framework like Aratusa. But all this markup is very important for information for what we have of the text. So my idea was that we need a tool to sort of strip off the tags, but yet keep the information they contain. So I wanted to have 2 layers of the same text annotated so that we have the original text, but only what is in the original form, and then also the standardized text, because that is usually more whole, so that you can have whole sentences for the syntactic annotation, for example. So the doctoral student I was talking about, Erik Henriksson, he designed this layering tool for me according to my wishes. So Sematia, which is available in this address for everybody to use, but it is in progress, so it might change any day. Don't count on it being the same, and we will develop. That's the idea. So I will first show quickly what we have. So for the original layer, we wanted from the choice tag, we wanted the original and sig tags, and then for the supplied text, I wanted that there is a marker that there is something supplied, but we don't take the text. So there is this SU mark, and same for the abbreviations. I wanted that there is a mark, that there is an abbreviation. Now just chose A. And if there is a lacuna with no supplement, it will be marked with a G for gap. And sort of difficult decision for a papyrologist was this last one, that we take the unclear letters just as normal letters. So they are taken in as they are. But, well, as you annotate in Aratusa, if you, as an annotator, feel that you don't trust the reading or the uncertain letters, then you just don't annotate it. Or you can also modify it in Aratusa, the XML, so you can leave the word out. But all these markers are there for the reason that I wanted that the tokenization is the same for both layers, for standard and original, so that then we can compare these layers. So in the standard layer, we have much more whole, sort of beautiful texts. So we take the regularized versions of the text, and we take the supplied words in, and we take the opened up abbreviations, and also if there's a lacuna with no supplement, again there's a G. Sorry. So I can quickly show how this works. There's a Google sign in SeaMatia, so that you get your own dashboard with your own layers. Here you would go and add source, and you take the source from a protocol navigator, for example. If we want image, we have. No, this was a really bad example. Yeah. Okay, so here with the Duke Databank transcription is the source address we want, and I just copy it and add it there, and it makes me this document. Then I can create 2 different types of layers. I can choose if I want the original or the standard. Give it some sort of name. I then recommend that the names are in accordance with the stable URI in the .info. Now it created me the original layer, and this is what it looks like. It shows here all the elements that it's dealt with this text. And this is an edit view, which is sort of nice when you see side by side all the options there are. Also the XML view. And the color codes here show what these tags are. So we have a gap here, and we also have a hand shift. This is another thing that with the hand shift, we get 2 different texts, so we would annotate the different writers for different tree banks. So here in the edit view, then you can see there's lots of abbreviations here, so it really isn't a whole unusable text. Then this we can copy and then take to Arethusa and annotate this text. And then same with the standard layer. It might look quite different.
Something now and asks me for my dashboard. By dashboard, you mean the provider of the dashboard?
No, this SeaMatia dashboard here. So yes, here we have the same text, which looks now more sort of reasonable. So after you have annotated the text, you can then bring the tree banks back to SeaMatia, and our future plans are, you can also see the tree. This is just the XML copy then from Arethusa. So in the original layer there might be sort of long list of something that isn't actually there, but then the word ID 9 will be the word etus in both layers. So that was the important thing. No. What's happening now? So in the future, we hope that we can do the queries then in Sermatia, but those we haven't built yet. And if anyone has any good suggestion what already existing tools Eric can use to build those, we are happy to hear. But we would want to be comparing the original and standard layers of one document, and then again querying linguistic structures in all the 3 banks. And then combine these also with metadata we intend for the Scribe project, add new metadata which is not there in Paparological Navigator. So the handwriting, well, these things would be in Epidoc, but they are not in with the papyri. If we know if something is some text is autographed, if there is an official scribe, if there is a social scribe, if the writer of the letter has been dictating to just someone who is literate, for example. And then also the text type, which is not directly sort of easily accessible from papyri.info, because there's also only the titles of the texts, but we would like more clear typology of the text type. And the addressee could be an important addition there. So that was, did I take too much time? That was it.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have 1 minute for questions. Simona, yes, of course.
I just want to say I'm very happy to see this, because I thought to say for many times trying to figure out how to manage an editorial text and to treat that how to manage it. Obviously, with all this, which half of your text is gone, where half is the slide, and what do you do? So this is really cool.
Yes, I'm very happy about this.
Yeah.
I have a question which probably has a one-word answer. Is the source code for Sermatia being made available anywhere?
I think it's all open. I would have to ask Eric.
Where we can find it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love to see the source code for that.
Yeah.
I think this is great. It's to see you actually wrestling with what needs to be done, so you could add this layer of information to this critical category of data to bring these together. So it's a lot of work and a lot of messy work, but it's well worth doing.
I hope so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome back to the last part of our morning session for SunoikisisDC Classic Learning Seminar. And now we have Lisa from the University of Sofia, who was with us for the training seminar, but also for the semester. He taught one common session, and his students produced a nice Google map with Asian faces in modern Bulgaria. So welcome.
Thank you. Am I heard on the microphone for those who are?
Yes, if you
are only yes. So I would like to share with you briefly, I hope, several things concerning the digital classics projects in Bulgaria. It's not that we don't have some, but we do. But due to the very low sustainability, long-term sustainability of the projects, one can say that we're advancing by making 2 steps forward, and in each 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we're basically stuck in the middle of nowhere now. And then I want to share with you my experience with teaching digital classics in the framework of SunoikisisDC 2015. Well, first of all, we started out of need, out of lack of resources. I'll turn to that later. we started very early with a project of ours, which the first idea which appeared in 1995. It was called Romulus Bulgaricus. It consisted in a bilingual library, an aligned bilingual library of Latin texts and their Bulgarian translations, their modern Bulgarian translations. Now I want to show you the site itself. As you can see, it's a bit ancient. That's why that's because we started it in 1998 and finished it in 2001. And up from then, we didn't have any resources to do some redesign and things like that. But it's still useful for our students because it's basically a bilingual library with online with a liner, automatic liner, which was especially designed for us, of all the Latin authors which have modern Bulgarian translations. And you can, we did everything by hand. We didn't have the tools for automatic alignment and instruction. We tagged the texts paragraph by paragraph, and we chose to, yeah. We chose to present the text for pedagogical purposes, so to say, as well as for research purposes, for whoever wanted to do that, in several fashions. First, you can see only the original, how it works. Then you can work only with the translation, only with the Bulgarian translation, and for many of the texts there are several Bulgarian translations which you can switch between. And you can choose to see them both aligned, paragraph by paragraph, not sentence by sentence, because it was too hard to do this. And it all started it for us. We all started with this project, and then we decided that we have to. For some reason, it's a bit slow, but when it comes, you will see. Until then, I would like to point out that besides the text themselves, there are some nice. Unfortunately, it's only in Bulgarian, but it was originally designed for Bulgarian students to use in the classroom. The text and the translation, so we didn't feel the need back then, and then we didn't have the resource to also have an English version. But it also had this, you can see here, additional features such as the encyclopedia of the names and of the realia, which you can meet in the text, a gallery of ancient monuments to be found in Bulgaria, and things like that. This, as I say, started in as early as 1995, and it continued until the beginning of this millennium. And it's still in use as a resource by our students. From then on, we moved on you got the idea. We moved on as good readers of Plutarch, of doing the respective project for the Greek works to be found in Bulgarian translation, the so-called Tesellus Bulgaricus, which now is, I'm showing you just screenshots of it because it's not working for reasons I'm going to clarify later. It's much simpler as an implementation. It took the shell WordPress block, and it contains only the translations, not the originals. The good thing about it, which also has some good divulgation and pedagogical purposes, is that it also contains a dictionary of all the personal names and the realia, which are to be found in the text, which are automatically extracted and then ordered by hand. It's, the corpus is not so large, so we could do this. And all the names and all the realia are, sorry, are ordered by alphabetical order, and also you give the proper transcription in Bulgarian. You can search this one. You can search in all the text when you can find the name, and then you have the versions of the name in the original Greek, in Latin, and in the basic European languages, English. Yeah, thank you. How does it work? Okay. Greek, Latin, English, French, German, Russian. So it's something which is still of use to not only for our students, but also for all the people who would like to use in their papers and their researches the proper transliteration of all the ancient names which are to be found in Bulgarian translations. It also has a part which contains all the prefaces, all the side notes, and things like that, which are connected in the editions of the translations, because this could also be something of use for whoever wants to research the reception tradition, the Bulgarian translation reception tradition of classical texts, which is not that known even in Bulgaria, even for people specializing in Bulgarian studies or literary studies or things like that. So we've collected all this. Then we started an initiative, by the way, it was instigated by the people at King's at first. They say, well, why don't you do a catalog, an online database of the Greek transcriptions which are to be found in Bulgaria. So we started something which still isn't finished. I'm just showing you the screenshots here. The so-called Telemon project, which at first concentrated on several hundred of inscriptions, which are to be found in two of the major cities in Roman Thrace, which is basically today's southern Bulgaria, Philippopolis and Augusta Traiana. And as you can see, it is organized, the transcriptions are organized in a relational database, which resembles something that you do for commercial sites. It's all the XML inscriptions are crammed into a Joomla database, and they can be browsed by classification. You have administrative acts, you have catalogs, you have funerary inscriptions, you have honorific inscriptions. You have something which we still haven't filled until now: instrumentum domesticum, public works, and sacred inscriptions. And you can browse them by subcategories, each one of those. You see here one inscription. Unfortunately, we still haven't put pictures, and the metadata are not properly displayed on this, but at least the texts are. The text will also have an English and a Bulgarian translation, together with an apparatus criticus. Here I've chosen two inscriptions which don't have that big apparatus criticus because they're relatively clear. We are doing a separate site which contains the documentation itself of the schema that we used for digitizing these inscriptions. And if Epidoc is a subset of TI, then you can safely say that our Telemon schema is a subset of the subset, because we're not using all of the features which are available in Epidoc, because for these limited amount of inscriptions, for now we don't need it. And we just made this site thanks also to the collaboration of Polina Rudanova, a student of ours, which some of you may know. She has come here to Leipzig to specialize in tree banking also. And the description of documentation is also made with this backthought of pedagogical purposes of teaching people how we did what we did with our inscriptions, and how they can use these XML elements and their attributes, and what does each element and attribute serve for, with links to with links to the description of the respective element or attribute in the EpiDoc guidelines and in on the TI site, in the TI guidelines. It's also still under construction. What we intend to do, what is my part of the job in doing, is to present pieces of code to give examples of how each of each part of the description works, each part of the schema works, and to show then via snapshots how does this look on the web page when translated with the proper transformation scenario. So as you can see, we cannot say that we haven't done anything that would qualify as digital classics in Sofia, but these all projects have are serving specific needs and purposes, and have also specific problems of sustainability. The specific needs and purposes for which we designed all of them, from the earliest, which was in 1990s, up to the latest, which is still under construction, the Telemon project, is that first, we in Bulgaria suffer from lack of access to texts and resources. At first, when I was a student, when we were beginning to develop this bilingual Romulus Multipus library, it was not only the Bulgarian translations that were lacking from the libraries or were not in enough copies for everybody to use, but even many of the Latin texts, many of the Latin originals were hard to come by. So by putting them online, we served some very basic needs of the education in Greek and Latin in the Department of Classics, and also due to the unavailability of texts, Greek, Latin, Bulgarian, etc., there was not, and there still isn't, enough research, especially on specific local material. There are many local monuments, local inscriptions, which are virtually unknown, not only to the people, and they are important for various reasons, historical, epigraphical, and paleographical, if you wish, and so on. But they are virtually unknown outside Bulgaria, and even to the Bulgarian public, which deals with epigraphy, archaeology, and things like that, there are many objects of research which are lesser known. They are not widely available, so you cannot do enough research on them. Not to speak about Bulgarian translations of classical texts, the translational reception of classical texts. A large part of it goes largely unknown for people dealing with literary studies, people dealing with the history of modern Bulgarian culture. Even the most popular translations of the basic texts in Greek and Latin tradition into Bulgarian are not that known. And if somebody wishes to read an older translation or to research how Euripides, let's say, was first introduced into modern Bulgarian culture, and what influence did he exercise on modern Bulgarian culture, you have to have access to the original text, which was not the case before we started these projects. So our main goal was and still is to provoke interest and to start creating communities which deal with topics which are connected in the broader sense to classical tradition, ancient languages, ancient monuments, and their reception and research in Bulgaria. Of course, we also have some very specific problems which have haunted us from the very beginning and are still haunting us today. The first is looking for the right IT people who can implement what you want to do. Because you may have a very clear idea what you want to do, but it's very, very hard to meet a person who is eager to do this and who understands what they should do in order to make it work and make it look the way you want. For example, for the Telemon project, which has been dragging for, let's say, 6 years now and still isn't it in its final stage of completion. We were looking hard to find computer specialists who could build the site and who had at least some idea of what Greek is, of what Greek characters look like, of what an archaeological monument is, and then we came across this guy who happened to be not only a programmer but also a Protestant pastor, so he had studied New Testament Greek, so he knew the Greek letters, and this was enough. This was a legitimate reason enough to hire him. But then we have the communication problem. There are people who kind of say, okay, why do you need this? Why do you need to do this in XML? XML for us, the commercial programmers, the industrial programmers, is a bit obsolete now. We can all stuff this in some very good, this very neat relational database, not in XML. Okay, everybody in the fields of humanities does it this way. We want to do it this way. Okay, but this TI schema you're using is very heavy. We can write for you a much lighter schema with fewer features. You have too many lines of coding. You know, the programmers, especially the commercial programmers, tend to do everything in as fewer lines as possible. I say, okay, we don't only want this to work, we also want to be able to describe a monument in an adequate way and to be able to transfer the information to other people who are dealing with this. So reluctantly, they accepted the TI schema, but we still have some problems with how they're gonna adapt this to the Joomla relational database that they're using, and I can assure this is very, very hard to do. Another problem that we have is I've chosen to call it the chronic malnutrition that we have for our project. You have money to do something very specific, and then you have someone paid. They do the job, and then they leave, and you're left with the result, but you have no means to sustain all this. Why did I show everything except this Romulus site? Why did I show everything in screenshots? Because now we are having problems with this ProClassics domain that we bought, and we have practically nobody to turn to update the content management systems that are behind it. So it's left in a stage like this, and we don't know when will we have the resources to move on. It might be in a couple of months if we look hard enough. It might be in a couple of years, which means that the projects will still remain at this stage, and nothing will be, although we have this as an activity, nothing will be seen as a result to the wide public, and this is what we aimed at in the first place. So, as I told you, we're moving we move to for each 2 steps ahead, we move at least 1 step back. So the progress is not at that pace at which we would like it to be, and the thing is that you not only have to have the resources to start a project, but you also have to ensure its long-term sustainability, which is the problem with the digital classics projects in Bulgaria, and this is why we are in strong need of people who can, who are willing to be hired to do this, but who will also have a knowledge of humanities, which is detailed enough in order for them to understand what they want to do. This is where SunoikisisDC comes into play, by which we want to train enough students who will be who are classical students or humanities students who are eager to move on and who are eager to help. We had some great separate examples of such people who were at our department and who did great things by moving forwards. One of them is Simona, who helped a lot in the initial stages of the Telemon project, and who is now doing the digital epigraphy and the XML and things like that. The other one is Kuridos Piano, whom we also can't very much, but we have to build this whole school of students, and this is what I tried to do the first steps for this in the previous semester when we had 8 second-year BA archaeology students which took the course in ancient Greek. This was their 3rd semester of ancient Greek, so they knew enough of ancient Greek. And 3 MA students in classics who had participated in XML workshops, Epidoc workshops, and who took an Epidoc XML optional course at our department. With the archaeology students, we started reading passages in Thucydides which are related to what they are studying in other disciplines, for example, classical archaeology, trachology, things like that. The passages related to ancient Thrace. For example, the expedition of the Athenian ally in Thracian king Sitalces in 2049 BC, which is to be found in the 2nd book of Thucydides. And we did this with the help of Perseus Digital Library and their translations and comments also. And the 3 MA students in classics, they produced an XML file of an inscription, the so-called Metonian decree of the Athenian ecclesia, which is to be found in Hill. It deals with the relationships between Sitalces and the Macedonian king Perdiccas, which is to be found in Hill, but it's also to be found in Wittenberg, in Siloge Inscriptionum Graecarum. And we took the text from there and we produced an XML file, and we also used the text as presented in the Packard Humanities Institute for Epigraphy. We took the text from their epigraphical database. And yes, now I will show you what we did not only with the text of Thucydides. I made them do some maps because this is what it's the easiest for them to do. First, this is I divided them into groups, and the first group had to do a map of the Athenian tribute list, all the places which are mentioned in the Athenian tribute lists from all the places that are mentioned in the inscriptions related to the Athenian decrees that were introduced by the first decade of the Peloponnesian War. Of course, Dassos, of course, Amphipolis. Then, in order to contextualize what was happening with Athens and Sitalces and Perdiccas, I made them do a map of all the numismatic finds from either Greek city-states or Thracian and Macedonian kings, which are contemporary to the events mentioned by Thucydides. And to also be able to give pictures of the monetary types which are to be found, and a short description of the monetary finds. And you can see they're derived from a digital edition of one of the best catalogs which are freely available from Bulgarian author, the ancient coins from Balkan Peninsula, called Bushmov. And then you have this this one, which is all the cities mentioned in the passage of Thucydides by for treating this expedition of Sitalces. Where did he pass through? What cities did he besiege? What cities did he take? What cities surrendered to him? What cities were loyal to the Macedonian king Perdiccas, to the Spartans? And at the same time, the contemporary archaeological finds from this period, the second part of the 5th century, which are to be found a bit inside the country, into the so-called Thracian hinterland of the Mediterranean coast, with also links to their description in the site of the Institute for Arts to the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. So this can also be used as a tool for studying not only the political relations between the Greeks and the Thracians at that period, but what was going on in art, in numismatics, etc. in the same period. The problem that I encountered, as you can see, these are several maps. We should have one map with different layers, but for this you need stronger collaboration between students. I decided that it was enough if I just group them and say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, and you communicate between each other to see how you do everything in separate layers on one map. It proved that individualism is a bit of a problem with our students, something which we have to take into account for when we work in the next semester. That they say, okay, I'll do this by myself. I don't care what other people are doing. So we came up with several maps, not one. So this is something we can think about when we plan for the next semester. This is more or less what I have to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But I'm happy to see these maps because it's
I wanted to ask if you have links on the homepage to those maps, if they are accessible to.
Well, I will upload them to the GitHub of Sunoikis. I haven't done this until now because I thought of combining them all into one, but then I decided that it will be harder because I will have myself anew to find all the places in PLS and geonames, and I cannot mechanically combine them. So I will just publish them as they are for all of you to see. I haven't done this so far, but I will. So you will have access to them.
This is good because we can use them and contribute them for the digital field project, which is this
Yes,
project for
okay.
digital for the media and for the work. And we are going to work on the key attribute list, so students will have a map.
Yeah, okay. So yes.
So this is another opportunity for international and global students working together across borders.
Yeah, so at least this at first I will upload it. I'll give you the link right away, and the other stuff probably will have to maybe translate the descriptions of the monuments and things like that. Okay.
Does anyone know about the work on GitHub by Christine Bannon trying with Epidoc with transcriptions of the median tribute lists? Is in part already.
We know, we
Okay.
have it. In fact, the plan is to work on this with Holy Cross and watch they have yeah.
So yeah, anyway, their data is out there.
Okay.
I wanted to start with how we can read facilities in Persian, but then I've decided that probably I should bring you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
If you were sorry.
No, it's my fault.
So I'm already. I'm doing my PhD here in Leipzig. My background is in translation studies. So you're dealing with a translator. I see anything from a translator perspective. So I have translated facilities in Persian, not all of these, but all of the propositions were just content here. And when I'm talking more, I will say you why I'm so proud of producing the first Persian translation written from ancient Greek into Persian. But before I start with facilities, I want to bring you in the state of your students. When they sit in your classrooms and they don't have any idea about Greek, and I want you to try this with Persian. If you don't find, please open this page. So my talk will be more interactive than I talk. I'm not a good speaker, so I prefer that you just work with me. So if you have it, go to end of the page and go to English alignment and click on that. Open this in a new page that you have other links in front of you. You should have something like this. Yeah, you do. Okay, nice. Looks very pleasing. Yes. For those who know German, please click on the other alignment link, German alignment, and you should have something like this, which is ready for you to do your great job. If you don't know German, it's not a problem. Go to first page of courses. If you have accounts, just go to your accounts. If you don't, you can log in with your Yahoo, Google Plus, whatever you have. There is no excuse, just like Are you already there? Yeah. If you are there, click on New Text Alignment tab. It's here. When you all, which non-German language are here, let me know, and then we keep on going. Who is already here? Who is already here? Okay.
Anyone needs help, that supports people in this process.
So if you are here, after signing in, you should be here. Just go to New Text Alignment tab.
So, Mary, are we supposed to see the social link on your GitHub page or just type it in above? I missed that.
No, you just type it.
Ah,
It's not in GitHub. Okay, when you are in New Text Alignment page, come here to this field and type DI, and then you should probably have D1. Select that. You all have it?
Wait, so what are we supposed to type?
Here D1, but if you type DIV, it should bring for you.
Search for text DIV.
DIV and then D1 comes. You just need to select it.
Ah, no. Oh, it's got a long bar in the end.
Yeah. So when you have it, you can retrieve the point that we want to work on is, please type, in the first field type 10, and the other one 64. And the same for the other line, 10, 64. So it would be from the alphabet letters, we want to work with the 10th alphabet and the point number 64 from those lists of alphabet. So once you're done, we start to work. In my GitHub page, I have an HTML file which helps you to read Persian with Roman letters. I have done the romanization. I think that you can just skip this. I put my screen on that file that you can just take a look at it and can read the words, not just seeing that visually. It should be the file. Now, go back to my GitHub page, and from those three links which are there, just click on the first one. If you are quick, then you can click on the others. If not, it's fine. And when you click on this, you should have something like this. Okay, you're all with me. Okay, as you see, you're all familiar with alignment system, are you? You have done at least once alignment. Yes? No? Shall I? Okay. Okay. Alignment works with source text and the existing translation. In this case, the existing translation, we have picked the English one, and very old one, and very word-by-word one, because of the purpose of our work. We didn't want to have a very big literary translation. The approach is just clicking on the source text and then clicking back on the related text in the translation. For example, I click on this, and then I think, okay, the rows should be the translation of this particular word. I click on the rows. And the alignment system works one by one, or end to end, or one to end, or end to one. It's up to you, whatever you decide. And then when it's done, for this point that you have, when you just mouse over a word, you will see the English translation and the alignment and the link, so the link between translation and the source text. It's clear. Now, for the ones who know German, I want you to visually recognize the words and then click on the German word that you think should go with the rows. If you don't know German, then try to translate. Why not? You have here you have the tree ranking. Go with that. Try to struggle with that. You say that it's predicated. It's very simple. It just gives you an idea how the structure of a sentence, a very short sentence in Persian is. So you know everything. It's preposition, noun, adjective. Simple. You have the English translation. Just do that. And when you are done, try to align your own translation. So when you have done your translation, you put your translation here and just click on align, and you are ready to produce your own translation and align it with the source text. Why not? I give you some minutes. And that's the screen that I've spoken. If you cannot figure out what visual words is, you can read it in Roman letters, and you have an idea how it could be pronounced. The X stands for, and then I have two A after each other. It's one on. And as you are doing your great job in translating, I want to just give you some tips to keep in mind. Take a look at Persian morphology. You have everything. There is no excuse. There are some vocabularies that are repeated in this poem, and because of this, I have picked this poem. Think of these vocabularies. Try to memorize them. Please think of where the predicate is placed in Persian. And Persian, surprise, surprise, is an European language. So the verb negation should be very similar with other languages. Try to find out where the verb negation is. How many times do you need? It's 11:13. 5 minutes? Do you think it's enough? Let's try with 5 minutes. If you need more time, then you do. And I can walk through if you have questions.
Okay, so I'm here. Okay.
And you want to
oh wait, yeah. So there it's from.
Yeah.
I want to do what you this project is to make sure it's much nice.
And it can work also with existing translation.
course.
A single.
I don't think
Well, it's okay, so first, you need to enter 1064. Yeah. Do 1064. No, 1064.
Okay.
You need to tell it to one thing, right?
And then we go to yes. And then as soon as we're just like this. That was exactly the exception I missed too. So you want to do an alignment in German or you want to produce one?
It should be there. It should be
Do you, are you in person? Yes.
No, the other passage shouldn't matter because if you tell them it is, then they'll pick up the other.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, just type through.
I really wish that.
And then again, 10. Here, here's everything. And now you have
Did you get? Yeah, you got. Yes, and then you got for two.
Yes.
And now,
we should say.
so what? Yeah, alignment. And then sort of figure out what each word means.
Yeah.
Like take.
Yeah, you're doing
It's a very good translation. And, well, there's a couple of technical difficulties in getting on the server, but I'm here, so.
I have to see that you're here.
Yes, I'm here. You're like cutting into things I want to talk about.
Exactly, I'm strong deep into this.
Well, now I have one thing.
Do you have to translate it? Yes.
I'm just thinking of it as like it was wax.
Yeah.
It's Indo-European, it's easy.
Thank you, Greg.
It's set down in the European, and it's like, it's not a problem.
Yeah, just
Yeah, so just write up something.
And save that because then I can use that.
Okay, provided that it's correct.
So.
Probably if I want to, then in holidays.
There we go.
So the word order should be
It does.
the rows without the
Go
rows.
back to. Yeah, so
But just
she wants you to do this.
do not translate from English, translate from Persian.
Whatever.
Take care of what are you doing, so take it as a.
So I'm gonna figure out what words this next to.
Okay, or do you have an
I just wanted to,
Translate it for yourself.
I just wanted to make sure which comes after which in order to.
Yeah, you can do the German. And then, so you're going to fill this in with text. You're going to put it up, it's going to take out the alignment, and then you're going to use it. You need alignment is that's one of the problems I think.
And take up the questions that I've asked. No, you're creating an additional.
Well, if you just gonna do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Where is that thing that you had up there before?
But
How do you? Oh.
That's not good. Yeah, that's, so yeah, just put on Word and then put on whatever word it wants to. Yeah, and then the first verse. And now you're.
Oh.
There you go, that's line.
Oh, yeah.
That's it's, but I think the point is that each listens a reference point or two. So the first one you should do is create the framework.
And just one more if you want to see.
Yeah, because so she can group there. Yeah, so she go back to it. She has one for yeah, and so now you can start the
So it's still work 3 minutes and then what you want to discuss.
Words.
So you put on first and then so you select it. You don't have to just put it on. So you put on next verse, and then put on verse. It's almost like it's slightly too simple.
Yeah, probably sometimes if you just so we now have to I'm not sure. Sure, we get time.
Just 1 minute.
It's fine. It's fine. So.
The way I would think about it, you start. Yes. Nature spaces happens. Sometimes it's a little bit function. Yes.
Okay, probably we can talk about this question a little bit. Have you any idea about Persian morphology? Have you got any idea about that? No. Have you looked at the morphology in Arethusa? Okay. It's very clear. Don't
because the negation is a part of the verb, this is what I can imply.
Yes. And the other thing is that there is no morphology there. Is that not great? Okay. So it's not, except the predicates, there is no morphology there, and it means that Persian has no morphology. Yay! Can you repeat some words that were so often repeated in the text? Like
Much.
Okay. For example, I think that you probably can in the literature, when you see like something like push, you can remember that there was rhythm.
Yeah.
Or B should be without.
Without, yeah.
So these are the things that you gradually pick up from doing the line. You have done just one line. If you repeat it, probably you will have something more in mind. And where is the place of the predicate? The end of the sentence.
Yeah.
So that's the rule. In each sentence, the predicate comes at the end. So now you know something new. And the verb negation, it's very easy. It's very easy.
At the end, Natasha. And it's repeated. I have
Just think of in the European languages. So Natasha is a negative verb.
Negative verb, not just
no, Natasha is not.
It's not.
Yeah.
So the verb being, yeah.
It's prefix. It's a prefix. Yeah. And which prefix?
No.
Yeah. And it's very common, I think. So German nicht, English not. So you have done just 10 minutes, one line alignment, and already now you know so many things. Not so many things, but for just 10 minutes, you know already things that are not taught in the classroom. There is no direct Persian translation from ancient Greek. The translation from Thucydides, there is just one translation, and this translation is made from German. When you read that German translation, you have no idea where are the comments of the first translator, where are the comments of the second translator. You cannot follow the ancient Greek text. You are reading Thucydides in Persian, but you are not reading Thucydides, the words that Thucydides has written. You are reading the German translation of that. And so, yeah, there is no translation there, and there is no dictionary there. And there is no textbook written in Persian there. So, okay. What I have done? I have done Greek I have translated Greek into Persian without knowing the word of Greek, with exactly the approach that you have taken. I'm a translator. I don't want to argue how bad my translation here is, but the scope, if I want to discuss it from the translator perspective, I can discuss it again because we have a scope story which says that the translation should match the scope of this approach. And I didn't want to have a very good translation in the sense of the translators need to define good, whatever it is. I wanted to have a word-by-word translation because I want that when someone click on a word, sees what this word exactly means in Persian. Yeah, the translation is not good, but it's exact. It is exactly from the Greek. And this is the thing that we need for Persian or the other languages, or the other way. For translation of Persians into other languages, for the classical languages which are not so common in other countries. And the thing is, I have done this about 1.5 years ago, and I just wanted to produce data. I didn't want to learn Greek. A few weeks ago, I was in a talk from Thomas, and he has shown some words in his topic modeling. It was far away from what I have done. I want to say that there was no connection between what I was seeing and what I have done before. And then he asked if people can understand the meaning of the words that are there. And I was thinking, oh God, they're so familiar. And I wouldn't say that I know all of them, but I know most of them. And I knew about the morphology of Greek, which, so you see, I can click on that and you see how, for example, here, I need to align the article with the noun because Persian doesn't have any article. And I have learned it here. I have learned that oi matches here with oi, which is the article, and so I have figured out so many things with just doing translation with the help of pre-ranking. So I say that it is the scaffolding, we say that learning by doing, but then learning by doing cannot be successful always, because if you do something wrong, then you learn it wrong. But I have done some scaffolding for you, so you haven't done something wrong. You have seen what the morphology in Persian is, what the verb negation in Persian is, and that's the scaffolding, what you have learned by doing. That was it.
Thank you very much.
It was great.
Thank you. Questions or other? Well,
So you just point out that it was so shocked to learn that B means the opposite of what it means in Arabic. I will never forget this. Now, thank you for.
Yeah, so being Arabic is like
with.
Okay.
So how do we go about now assessing what goes on in people's heads when they do this? You described anecdotally, clearly, major changes, and how do we get our hands around it, and how do we assess it over, the more you do, say you engage people over the course of a semester, and you have them working with Persian poetry, Greek poetry, or just one or the other, but they don't know the language, but nevertheless you say, we're going to do this in a sustained fashion. What do they get? What is the mix? How does it fit in with an actual class? Take just one practical example. But how do you assess? How do we assess?
I think that we can generate different type of exercises. We can go, in language pedagogy, we have different types of exercises. We have closed exercises, for example. We can just give them the existing translation and ask them just to do that. And then probably with the time, we see that how quickly they can do that, and then go for the next step and give them some translations and ask them to find the correct translation and then align that. And at the end, we can give them the free exercise just to do the translation by themselves. And then we can measure probably with the time that they spend, or with the how often they look for tree ranking and so on. Probably we can assess that. That's the way that we can think of.
That's interesting. So we could define cost functions. Every time someone goes to a dictionary lookup, or to a tree bank, or to an aligned translation, we assess some number to that. And the more they have to do, and the number of those operations they perform reflects their internalized knowledge of the language. They start with 100%, as we just did.
Yeah.
But the goal is over time things stick, that they don't look up the same words over and over. Now, 40 years ago, I remember when I was reading Latin, I can remember my physical notebook, I had vocabulary to read Virgil, the eclogues, and I would look at the same goddamn word oak, I think, over and over. I was scribbling in there, I put this goddamn thing up already, I know it. And there was no way really to deal with that here. You want to have sort of a cumulative knowledge of what you know, what you should remember. What can we do? Sort of manage and optimize our cognitive resources. Conversely, this also is the answer to the fact that we're not going to get people doing 4, courses of Greek prose composition like ever in most countries, and that's what we depend upon for our model of education. That only works in really specialized cases. This is a model saying, well, you could start another way, and the question is, how far can you go? If someone really got into this and spent a couple of years working, and they started this way, what would they have? What could they do? The answer is a lot, but what?
It's amazing to me that there's no Greek Persian dictionary. How did that happen? I mean, isn't there not even anything really ancient, or not ancient is probably the wrong word, but medieval or something that goes back in
Medieval, in which sense, you know, we have medieval things, but Persian?
Well, yeah, going back, to the, time, I don't know, 14th century or something like that, there wasn't enough traffic between the Persian-speaking people and Greek people.
The thing is that in that time, the Persian speakers, the Persian scholars, were all, they always produced their works in Arabic. So there are a bunch of the works that are from Persian authors, but they are in Arabic.
They were bilingual because they were Persian, but they were educated in Arabic, and they even versed in Arabic. So this was for Messina, for a lot of people who are famous for.
But they were involved in other language groups too. Like they were in India, they were in Turkey, they were in a variety of places. It wasn't just Arabic and Persian, right? I mean, it seems to me like there ought to be something out there.
Yeah. No, actually, no. That we are struggling in Egypt because we don't have any Greek Arabic dictionary. I mean, like LSJ, for example, so we don't have this. The only one which is available is the one which is really good is now producing this Gerhard interest. So. Thank you. It's encouraging. Yes. Yes.
And we have the last time conversations about each classes, music, so thank you very much. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Yes, my university in Cairo called Ancient University, which is University the second university in Cairo, and then my PhD student in Institute of Therapy in my and originally I have studied English and education, and then I have also taken majors and one minor. Now I am an assistant lecturer in the Department of Geography and Civilization. So I will assist by start by quoting something that is very interesting. It's a personal experience. It is said that the adult cultural speaker of Tier 1 is also in language that might be silly. Children are so actually I need to learn Arabic, and this is something which appeals to me. So a lot of situations that I have in which I was very sorry. Learning English and also writing my dissertation in Germany. So this was a challenge, but I accepted it. And I have learned and something that my experience is so they are now bilingual, German and Arabic. Sometimes they are pronounced directly, but anyhow, they are and I hope that they are non-self-centered, because also questions are said about why you are in Germany. Are we Egyptians? Are we Arabic? But I go through this experience, and then through their education, they will be at the end productive human, and also contribute to the needs of the family and the needs of the society, whether this is German or Egyptian. So a very general introduction, which is related to this also, which is the rule in the world. But I think the rule in the past is present, and also for the future is multiculturalism, pluralism, which promotes either tolerance or violence. This is a personal choice. So, and also this could be said also about the climate change. The climate change is a rule, not the exception. So, and also the migration, and which I am personally in, because yes, this immigration to migrate, to stay, and also the evolution also is the rule, not the exception, and again, to adapt or to extend. It's a personal choice also. So now, the revolution which we are in has started with my field of study with papyrus, as we know, and we went to codexes and then printed books, codexes which look like the books, and then the printed books, and now we are here in the digital age, and we are talking about the digital classics. And to start with what is classics or philology in Egypt, of course, we all know that we have this dream of having Alexandria and the Pinnacles of Callimachus, and all this have started from this country, from Cairo University, from Egypt. And again, there are this Bibliotheca Alexandrina, which has been the people who has tried to revive this was trying to imitate the ancient library. And also for the classics, also it's important, Greek and Roman Egypt, it's all patrimony. And of course, for me, this is something personal also, because the Cobos is just a few kilometers from the place where I was born in the Delta. And this is Plotinus, of course. And Nonnos, if we go to Upper Egypt and discourse of Aphrodite, if we talk about bilingualism, again, this Coptic and Greek. And to go to the modern world again, this is Bibliotheca Alexandrina, and there are a lot of criticism. Sometimes it's reason, sometimes it's not, about this project. But there are a whole book about this, which is called Return to Alexandria, and it's very interesting to read, by the way. But Roger Bagnan, the one who is very interested in Egypt, classical programs in Egypt, has wrote something about the dream of Alexandria, which has some meaningful here. So the contemporary attempted to create a new universal library in Alexandria itself, which has received a numerous press coverage, is only the latest representation of this tradition. I mean, he means a tradition of dream, you know. But he said that many aspects of this project have been criticized, perhaps for this reason. And he goes to say the most serious problem at present being the lack of a coherent collection development policy and funds to carry out. So in Egypt, we have a problem about this collection development and collection management collections, which has to do with papyri. I will come to this later. So these are the classical schools in Egypt. The first one is the Cairo University, which has been founded by Taha Hussein, the one who has been educated in France. He actually went to study Arabic, but he studied Latin, and he came to found this department in 1925, maybe earlier than that, but it's still working. And Ancient University, the department there is called Ancient European Civilization, from 1954 to the present. And Alexandria University, the main project of Alexandria University was of course the reviving of Alexandria. And there are newly founded in Mansoura and the Delta University and department, again, Greek and Latin Studies, Sohag University and South Valley. Both of them are in Upper Egypt, but they are relatively small. So, and Gregor Kane, who is not here now, has in 2010 has said that the Cairo School of Classics is one of the most active programs in Greek and Latin in the world. Active but unrecognized. Why it's unrecognized? Because few classicists, for example, he says, realize that the University of Cairo supports one of the most active programs in Greek and Latin in the world because they publish largely in Arabic, and because print culture, with its massive libraries, favored a handful of universities in the first world. This is the words of Greek. So this is actually what we are doing in Egypt. We are teaching, of course, and this is Greek grammar. So as you can see, this is Arabic, and this is, of course, the English. Active voice, middle voice. So the students are introduced to this language with both the English terms and the Arabic terms. But of course, they are learning the language not with they could recognize the English, but they have no trouble in saying that this is mutakallim. Of course, first person singular, but it's mutakallim. It's easier, and they will concentrate more on the language itself, not to memorize the English words. So it's basically, and to go on, this is the translation of the Iliad, which has been published by the NCT, the National NTC, National Research, National Translation Center, NTC, and this has been done by the scholars of the Cairo University. This is in I can't remember, but it's not 5-10 years ago. So this is the Iliad, and there's also some words from the head of the department. This is Adil Mahas, or Adil Mahas, the key characteristics, that has been translated into Arabic, and of course Menander. Discourse has been also translated in January this year, has been translated into Arabic, and also Latin is being translated. This is my colleague, he's called Hatton. He's teaching Latin in my department, and he has translated Plautus, Mustilaria. So, and you can Classics in Arabic is my blog, and you can have a look at all these activities. So this is also what I do personally. This is a checklist of the papyri published, unpublished papyri from the Egyptian Museum. It's available on the AIP, the International Site of Papyrologists. And it's also relevant because I have found that there are 4 cases, and now there are 6 cases of simultaneous publication of the same piece by the Egyptians and the non-Egyptian scholars. Sometimes this happens because actually the Egyptian scholars don't recognize that this piece has been done by an international scholars, and also the international scholars don't recognize this, which for me a sign just to say that we are not connected. That's simply to say it like this. So, and these are the conditions that what I have said, that we don't have a collection management policy either in the Ministry of Antiquities or in the university. We are not cooperating, I mean the university, we are not cooperating with the Ministry of Antiquities, which has all the papyri, which has all the permission for the archaeological site. We are doing all the research, so it's a challenge. So, and I have, in the digital Egyptology, I have said that we have to overcome these negatives of the past. Most important to me is Eurocentricity. And because actually my department is called Ancient European Civilization, and this is how Sino has founded or revived Greek and Latin in Egypt, in Egyptian universities, and he believes that European civilization is a supreme civilization in the history, and so I say that this is European exceptionalism. I have said it before, but I am trying to tell my colleagues and all the people in the modern, please, it's not European. It's Greek and Latin, and it was in Egypt here, it was in the Mediterranean, it's all over the world, Bulgaria, but yes, we will make it, you know, it's not exclusively European. So now to turn to digital philology in Egypt. Does it exist? No. Digital classics or digital philology does not exist, does not virtually exist in Egypt. But we don't have to start it from scratch. It's better, I mean, it is better to recognize philology in Egypt as part of the world, and to recognize Egypt past, Egypt present as part of the world, not exceptionalism, because I think there also exceptionalism is attached also to Egypt, and we are seeing that there are special cases with Egypt which I don't believe in it. You know, Egypt was part of the world and now is part of the world. And now to come to again this book, the world in which different societies live are distinct worlds. Not merely the same world with different labels attached. This is the linguistic relativity theory, or Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is very much debated. But anyhow, it says that the world we are living in is distinct world, not just labeled Arabic, German, French, whatever the language. And I think this has been said that Wilhelm von Humboldt is the one who has recognized this, the father of Alexander von Humboldt, which Greek has his chair, and thankful for this we are here. So this is, I think, this has been developed also by Dimitri, and here also Garth Foden, who was working, but it's, I think, anyhow, his book, Garth Foden's book, was here before and after Muhammad, the first millennium, refocused and translating it into Arabic. But you can have more or less the same content, I mean, the same idea, the same concept here, heirs of the Roman Empire, which he is saying that the Roman Empire was divided into three empires, and the three empires have extended even further than the borders of the Roman Empire. The Latin was the Arabic world, which came to be Islamic, and this Catholic and Latin, and this Greek East, which came to be Orthodox. And but again, we do have the Greek thought, which has transmitted through translation into Arabic. So we are, and I think also the same with the Mediterranean world. All the countries around the Mediterranean, and all the people who. Yes, this one, yeah. And with all the people who identify themselves with Greek and Latin. And the digital space now provides us with a lot of content, more content than a handful of professional scholars can ever interpret. And this actually, I think this is very accurate, because we have here the Arabic, you know, this is Arabic translation of Talon's book, De Anatomikis. So this is available digitally from the digital corpus of Greek Arabic studies, has been done by Harvard's Mellon Foundation, with funding was Mellon Foundation, Tufts, of course, and this something has to be developed, you know, try XML, and you could do whatever you want with this. In addition to this, the digital space has also provided us with the manuscript themselves. You know, this is the manuscript of Gallen's book, Gallen's book that I have just shown. So, and this is available through Kata library, and the manuscript is a whole bit. So it's very important for me that the students get to know this, because I'm a Doctorologist, you know. It's not enough for me to know the text, to know the language, the Arabic, whatever the Arabic, the Greek, without knowing or having an idea how the material itself will apply. So this is the whole book is here. You can download it, you can do whatever you want with it. So I will go back to my specialty, which is Greek papyrology, and I think this is a bilingual text which have a Greek and Arabic. So, and again, this is the material itself. And in the material you have Greek and you have Arabic, and of course we have Greek and Latin, and we have Greek and Hebrew and Greek and all languages. So I think we could do this digitally with for papyri confu, which we have seen this morning, and Mercedes, which we already know and are using. So this is collaborative editing, and collaborative editing goes beyond one person's ability and one school's ability. And this is a text that I have showed you, and you can see here that the Greek text is only available, and when you go to the Arabic 3 lines, and I suppose there, Arabic online. And I know that this was a challenge, because the Greek goes from left to right, or the Arabic goes from right to left, and the XML file with a lot of markups would be messed up if we type in it in Arabic, but I was able to do this. Actually, suddenly, I have discovered it because I have just, it's every day I just switch from right to left to right, because I'm writing Arabic and English, so it's the second nature for me. So when I have just switched it to right to left, I was able to do it with line and boss without any need for special markups or anything. So, and I was able to save it. Again, I was not leaving myself when I did this, because it's, you know, if I showed you this, this is not the correct thing to see, because it's messed up. But the right brackets are here. But when you Control Shift right, you will have this, which is messed up here. It's a second nature, you know. So for me, but I have discovered that I was very happy to have this, and we are developing something now in order to host the Arabic texts along with the Greek texts. So this should be, again, a real reflection of the material itself. And this should be the result of this. And actually, again, with Arabic texts, we have only 2,000 published Arabic texts, and still we have 150 Arabic papyri texts unpublished, 150,000. So, so to come again for this article, and we have now the tools to expand our populations and create across language, culture, to develop intellectual and personal relationship with our colleagues from whom we had been cut off. And I think this is SunoikisisDC, the whole of SunoikisisDC. So I also used Mercedes. I have done this, Aristotle Poetics, you know, which is available from the demo publication. I have only had this 5 chapters from Aristotle Poetics, as I have studied back then when I began to study English, of course in English translation. I did not thought back then that it is really Greek. So now, and of course, provider info, we could do it. And thanks to Gab, I asked him to translate this into Arabic. Because this is very new. This is still in Kuwait, so nobody knows about this in Egypt. So it's very hard to do this. By the way, I had spent about 4 or 5 hours. I thought it's very easy to do, but actually not. 4 or 5 hours for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines, 5 hours. No, I can't do all this. So maybe also I have asked you to translate all these. You told me that you will think about it. But anyhow, I can't do anything, alone, of course. And this goes to this idea of Sunoikis, to extend this to a global community, because we need each other. Of course, we don't have this technology, we don't have this training, and I mean, in Egypt, most of the students are unaware of this, and most of the students are stick to the print culture, the books and the traditional ways. So we have to tell them, hello, there are some ways to do this differently. And speaking about cooperation, this is a DAAT database, which I'm here actually because of the DAAT, cooperation project between Egypt and Germany. And so they have made a database which is nice. In this database, you have a lot of information about Egypt. When I speak about the cooperation between Germany and Egypt, and these are the actually fordert projects, and there are projects which is going on between Leipzig and Ancient University. And this is something also Greg has showed us this before, which is a venue for having fund for workshops here in Germany and Egypt. And also this one I have talked to Monica about, which is to have some students to come here to Germany, and some German students go to Egypt to learn Arabic, and also to go to the Classicist department, see their colleagues, how they are working. The working condition is very important to Egypt, how we struggle with the authorities to give us access to the library, and it's very important to me to have this personal experience, and also for the Egyptian student to come here to know how their colleagues are working, what is the difficulties, not just to stay in Egypt and say, wow, this is the heroes. Yeah, they are the heroes, they are doing all these things, but they are actually heroes in struggling the problems. Not everything is settled up, the life is so nice. No, this is not the idea. And I think this is a cooperation between Ancient University, in which I'm teaching, and Germany, and in this excellent center, the student can learn Arabic and German. So it's quite an experience to come to Egypt and learn the language itself, which is necessary for any scientific activities. And of course, this is my project. I will talk about it tomorrow, to have some Arabic through Mercedes and provide info. And I have the pleasure to present it in the classical, the King's College series, which Gabby has given me this chance. And also, this is a private fellowship to maybe I will apply for it. And for the international cooperation in Germany, these are the main important countries where the students from Egypt goes, of course, USA, and then Britain, and then France, and Germany, and Canada. So we could do something to extend the cooperation between Egypt and these countries. And I suppose this is, no, there will be, okay. There are 2 slides in which I am referring to the Fulbright Foundation, the Fulbright, which is in Egypt, which we could have programs for international cooperation. and also for Newton Musharrafa, which is a British-Egyptian cooperation, which we could also make project or have students come to Egypt or go to England. And with this, I end up my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yes, Susanna, of course. Sunoikis is not only for teaching and learning remotely, but to exchange people. So this is one of our goals also here in Leipzig. So to have people coming here and other people going to other countries. So definitely we want to work on this. So yes. Questions? Reflections?
Yes, I have one comment. Yeah. I think you mentioned this in the previous presentation, sort of emerged somehow. I find it very striking as a difference between, the field of Arabic studies in general and sort of the traditional classics that I think no one in the presentations I've been to these days in the traditional classics ever mentioned sort of the need of digitizing manuscripts or working with images, whereas in the two presentations that we had today, this sort of emerged clearly as one of the needs. And I wonder whether this is because we are in badly need of better editions of our texts, whereas in the case of the traditional classics, people lacking, the editions are there, so we need to do something more fancy with them. But it's just something I know what people think about this, but it just strikes me as an obvious difference between the two.
I totally agree with you. We need digital edition or new printed edition, whatever, for all the texts that we do have. As has been presented also in the Doctoral physics, there are still work to do here. So the text that we think that we do have the text is not the complete text. It's reconstructed text as we know, but how the standards of these texts are matches the real thing, the manuscript or the papyri or whatever we do have. I think we should be involving in a lot of discussion on this. Totally agree with you.
Yeah, definitely. One of those digital editions is to go back to manuscripts, to papyri. Yes, we need that. Sometimes we depend too much on critical editions, and we don't know to read the manuscripts for various reasons, which can be difficult. There are practical reasons. We have people in Leipzig working on manuscripts. Chiara Paladino is one of them, for example. She's working on Greek geographers, and she's looking for manuscripts, but it's not easy. It's
and practically also, calligraphy is not something which is easy to.
Yes, for the discipline, and then also because from an institutional point of view, it's not easy to go to the library to get access to resources. We have to pay a lot. I know that because I just paid 600 euros last week for a manuscript for images, so I know that. Yes, I don't mention because it's in my country, but
I think this is important. I mean, the manuscript and the papyri, we have the same problem. We don't have the papyri, but we have to work on papyri to have our tenure, to have our researches accepted. So it's very difficult. And as you say, we pay for it. Even it is should be a heritage, And we have a lot of problem with the systems, The Egyptian system, the British system. I think they are mainly based on the British system, based on paying for what we want. The American, and I think the American for the papyri, it is available from the APIS or papyri, but for manuscript, I don't know. So yes, we have to do these questions.
Are there test procedures if you need something, the way to contact the department or museum?
You mean in Egypt?
In Egypt, yes, because you mentioned this complete disconnectedness of the institutions that work on and how these things.
Yeah, actually, the Egyptian Museum, I have published 12 texts, Greek texts from the Egyptian Museum. And it was very difficult to put the application to apply for this. It was very difficult. There is no regulations. You have to figure out the regulation yourself. You have to figure out the formula yourself. You have to figure out everything. And I think this is because some of my colleagues will say that you speak Arabic, you can go, but yes, I can go there, but nothing is clear, you know? You just go and speak to the people, hello, I'm a scholar, oh, okay, cool man, cool guy. Come, what you want, papara, yes, of course we can give you, but nobody will give you anything, you know? after 2 weeks of contacting, nobody will give you anything. So, the papaya are in the Egyptian Museum. They are under the custody of the Ministry of Antiquities, but we are working in the university. The people, the curators are not professional. They have studied Egyptian language and archaeology because it's Egyptian. Greek and Latin is not. So this is something. Most of the collection are Greek and Latin or Greek. Most of it, you know. The number of the highest number are Greek providers. So, but he is a curator of an Egyptian education. So, I think this is something that has to be added, which goes beyond also our own capabilities in ancient studies. We are not able to change the goals of antiquities. So.
Well, then I'm happy you mentioned European and then Alexandrian library. European, well, this label, this adjective, European studies, but also in Europe we still depend on this vision, classics, Greek and Latin European. And this is why, for example, in our university we learn just Greek and Latin, not other languages. This is a problem also for us, we still depend on this old vision.
I agree with you because in the last presentation I talked to the people and someone, I cannot remember his name, told that it's important, it may be important for the Egyptian student, I mean for Egyptology, to study Arabic because they go to Egypt either than to study Latin, because Latin is something which is, I think, a requirement for to have a PA in Egyptology. But again, this has to be changed. Not Latin, maybe in addition to Latin, he could choose Arabic as a requirement for engaging with Egyptology because they spend some time there, and it's very difficult to go to the Egyptian and to ask him anything in Latin, you know.
Maybe the other way around, because I know that now Egyptologists are not studying anymore Greek. For example, I have many difficulties in finding, we have a project of the Rosetta Stone here, but I can't find a person who can align the three different versions of the text, the Greek, hieroglyphic and Greek.
You mean either he is Demotic or he is Greek and you have two persons?
Yes, yes, because they are not studying anymore Greek. I understand the reasons, because again, Egyptologists depended too much on the Greek vision of Egypt, so this is another problematic thing, but yeah. And then the Alexandrian library, well, yes, so I think we have to distinguish between what we know about the real library of Alexandria and the dream. I like this very much, because this is a difficult topic, but the dream is one thing, I like it, I think we have to follow it. I like this project of the Biblioteca Alexandrina, which is great, fantastic, but the Alexandrian library, we know, we have very few sources about it. It was founded by the Ptolemies in Egypt. It was the result of the Greek domain. Yes, indeed. There is a big debate because we don't even know how many bronze papyri there were there. There were not only Greek and Latin works, but also works in other languages. They translated, of course, many things. But still, it's the result of a very important political purpose, aim for legitimizing the Greek domain. So it's complex, but at the same time, if we study Greek law of that period, we know that in Egypt, so the Alexandrian library, the Greek domain, but also many other in Alexandrian communities, language, involving language, law, religion, of course, daily life. So it's very, very interesting, but always distinguishing between two things: what we really know about the Alexandrian library and the dream that began immediately at that time. The dream of the Alexandrian library is something that started at that time, this vision of.
Yes.
And, but the model is important because now, for example, for our digital projects, the first thing, the catalog. And the catalog is fundamental.
Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, also first, the main thing is not only the sources, but the catalog. And one of the more, I can say that in fact, the Perseus project, we have a librarian, a professional librarian, working on the catalog. And Kalinos is the model. So again, and how to cite sources. Nowadays we have this problem, how to cite digital resources. So it's an extraordinary model.
Yes.
And but again, Alexandria at that time, multilingual, but also different separating realities. So it's.
Yes, I totally agree with you because you are trying to model our philology or our work. Because first we have the catalogs, bibliographies, and then we can go on. But I would just, and I think the book here is saying this. He was criticizing just that. The Alexandria, as you said, the physical Alexandria itself now, and the surrounding, in Egypt, because we do have a lot of problems, and it should have been not like this. Anyhow, this is a vision of Greek-Roman heritage. I am not against it. I'm teaching it. I'm just against this misconceptions, because. The person who are in charge now, it's a good place, but in order to model all this, and to speak, he's speaking most of the time in English. Okay, I don't have again a problem with English, but he's speaking to Egyptian with English, and this thing's not. If he wants to say to the people that this is your heritage, you should communicate in Arabic. I think this will be easier to give them the ideas in Arabic and to tell them that Alexandria was in Egypt or Egyptian. Greek and Latin is your heritage.
And now it's an Egyptian project.
Now it's an Egyptian
one.
His role also there, or the revolution, the 25th revolution, is something which he is criticizing against, because this is how we connect to the past, the Alexandria, the revolution, modern Egyptian history, and also for papyri. I think also it is connected to the modern Egyptian. Paula Davoli has. She has written about the modern role, modern history of Egypt and archaeology and papyri. So this is something has to be discussed and go on until we try to have a better vision of all of these things, to train. This is the dream, this is what we are working on, and this is the physical, and we have to separate the two of them.
Yeah, also because the Alexandrian Library in Hellenistic time was, in the end, was not a building. That it was a collection within the museum, a living collection, and it dies not for the fire, but when they start not to understand the content of this collection. And it's true, I have studied a bit the Alexandrian Library, so this is very, very interesting. It's a living collection of rolls of papyri. So, and the museum was the physical place with the scholars and so,
this scientific societies were modeled according to the museum.
And there were many libraries at that time. Most of the disappeared and other local. Anyway, sorry, I love this topic so much. I can't go on too much. So thank you very much for all these presentations.